All right, can you guys hear me? That's weird, I can't see the chat. All right, say hello everyone. I don't know if my chat is working. I don't know, say hello if you're there in the chat. I just want to see if it's working. Let me try refreshing. No, that's a bad idea. All right, so I'm assuming I can't see anything in the chat, so oh wait, let me see if I can pull it up on my phone. That might be better. Yeah, for some reason my the chat on my computer isn't working, so let me see. Of course, this picks the worst time not to work. Let's see, my channel. Okay, there, I can see the chat. Okay, just a sec. I don't know why my computer's deciding not to work. Yeah, sorry guys, just a sec. Come on. Okay, so now I can see the chat and okay. Oh yeah, oh wow, a lot of people. Okay, woo, hello everyone. Okay, so it seems that it's working. Okay, so hello everyone and welcome to the video. Sorry for the technical difficulties. So if you saw the title of this video, this is basically just going to be a discussion of every single clarinet that I own. And I'm going to be showing them to you guys. I'm going to be playing them a little bit for you. And I just want to have like a little discussion of like the clarinet family in general. What is that PVC thing behind you? That is a contrabass recorder. So this is just a little instrument I was trying to make. It doesn't play in the second octave very well, but the first octave is okay. What the heck just blew out of there? Oh, cobwebs. Ew. Yeah, I haven't played this thing in a while. Yeah, so that's just something I kind of built just for fun. If I try to overblow it, so that's me trying to play an E, but it comes out as an E flat. So the octaves aren't aligned, and that's because the bore is too big. So I got to try and make another one of these out of 1.5-inch PVC pipe instead of this stuff. But yeah, that's just a fun little project. It reminds me of a tin whistle. Yeah, it's got a cylindrical bore instead of a true conical bore that a recorder should have. But I've seen recorders with like a Renaissance era recorders will have a mostly cylindrical bore. So I was kind of trying to base it off that, but it didn't work too well. But so anyway, so yeah, as I said, I'm just going to be doing like a demo of basically every instrument that I have, or every clarinet that I have at least. I have some other non-clarinet instruments. I might talk about them a little bit later. But so to start it off, I'm going to be talking about this thing. So I don't know whether you would consider this a true clarinet. So it is a chalumeau, but it is a 3-key chalumeau. So you have what would be the E, B key on a clarinet. Then you have a B flat key, which would be a register key on a clarinet, and then you have your A key. So it's in the key of C. So the 7-finger note is a C, but it would correspond to a piccolo clarinet in the key of G. I have a single key chalumeau in the key of C, single key. So does it only have like the A key, or does it just have a register key? I'm assuming it only have an A key. Yeah, because most of the chalumeaus you see on like eBay and stuff, they're not true chalumeaus, because a true chalumeau has at least just an A key, which is good because like I was saying, like the keyless chalumeaus, you really can't play any repertoire with them, because you really need like the more than an octave of range to play anything serious. So those are mostly just anything with a key is very useful. You can actually use it to play chalumeau repertoire. But yeah, the cool thing about this is it was originally designed only to play in the lower octaves, so from low B to a high F. But what I did was I filled in the register. As far as I know, the register key isn't. Yeah, it's not. So what I did was I kind of wanted to turn this into like a Baroque clarinet like kind of thing. So I filled it in, and so it kind of works like a register band. Although the intonation isn't great, so. And I can barely get the high C. I'm just as bad as this as I am on piccolo clarinet, but it's just a neat little, fun little thing. The cool thing is, well, I know you used to be able to get these for like $100, which is a really good deal, because generally when you get like an instrument, if it has keys, like it tends to bring the price up a lot. But like it was $120, and I just had to do a little bit of tuning work, and it's a fun little instrument just to mess around with. But as far as being musically useful, it's not. It's, well, maybe. I mean, I guess you could play like chalumeau repertoire in it, but nothing really. You can't really use the upper register as well as I would like. But it's yeah, it's a fun little instrument to mess around with. So let's get to the first true clarinet. The smallest one I have is an 1880 Buffet E flat clarinet. So the reason I can tell it's I can't determine the exact year that it was made, because it was made before Buffet started using serial numbers, but I can tell just based off a few features that it has. Obviously, it's got the integrated barrel into the upper joint, which is kind of annoying because you can't really tune it. You have to tune at the mouthpiece. As far as playability, the instrument does have new pads. However, one problem is the linkage right here is broken. So if you try to use the B key too hard, it'll actually pop the whole key out. So I got to resolder that. But that's just a little problem compared to the bigger problem with this instrument, and that's in the key of, it's in a high pitch. So it almost plays like an E natural clarinet. And I don't really have a good E flat mouthpiece. Wow, that's weird. I never realized my E flat mouthpiece doesn't even fit in it, which is weird because I definitely remember playing this thing in the past. Just having all kinds of difficulties today. Huh. I wonder if a B flat mouthpiece would actually fit. I doubt it. Yeah, I think this thing, it came with the original mouthpiece, but that thing has a giant chip in it, so I cannot play that. Which is, no, I guess it's designed to take an E flat mouthpiece. I don't know. Let me see if I can get this to work. No, we'll just come back to this one. It's not very good anyway. You're just going to hear me play an out of tune scale, and it's going to be miserable. So let's get on this. that I did in a live stream last week. So if you caught my live stream last week, you saw me work on this D clarinet. So I just went through, I replaced all the pads, I replaced the tenon corks and the key corks, and I basically just got it playing. It's not perfectly in tune. Some of these older clarinets from Eastern Europe tend to have pretty bad intonation. This one, it's not terrible. It's let me give a demonstration. So originally, this instrument used a very small mouthpiece. I don't know if I still have it here. I think this is it. Oh no, that's not the right one. Somewhere I have a German mouthpiece that this went with, but it was chipped. So I couldn't find a German E-flat mouthpiece. So I had to basically remount the barrel, and I got it to fit a modern French mouthpiece. And by the way, guys, if you have any questions about any of these instruments, feel free to stop me and ask away. So yeah, let me. But the one cool thing about this, the remount the barrel, is because of how skinny it is, I can just take a B flat reed and I can lay it on flat. So it means I don't have to buy E flat reeds, which is pretty nice. Unfortunately, all I have is a cheap Chinese mouthpiece. It's not great, but I'm not an E-flat player, so I don't plan on getting a really nice mouthpiece. So this instrument is really unique in my collection, not just because it's in the key of D, but it's actually one of the only instruments I have that's Albert system. Generally, I try to stay away from Albert system instruments just because I don't really like the fingering too much. I'm just so used to Bohm system that I mean, just playing Albert system just feels weird to me. And come on. So what was I gonna say? Yeah, it's just a Bohm system in general is just more logical. So when you have a Bohm system instrument, for example, you just lift one finger after another to play an F scale. If you want to play a G scale, you just lift, again, one finger after another. Whereas this, it's based on instead of being based on a 7-finger note for your tonic, it's based on a 6-finger note. So if you put 6 fingers down, you lift one finger up after another, and that plays a scale. And that's great if you're playing in the key in sharper keys. But if you're trying to play in flatter keys, then it can start to be a problem, because F would be that, and trying to switch back between your fingers back and forth like that it can be kind of tricky. I'm sure some people who play German system clarinets would probably correct me, but yeah, I just like Bohm system instruments better. Is the chat working? Because I haven't seen any comments for a while. Which makes more sense for D clarinet. Sharp keys are more needed. Yes, that is actually a really good point. Oh, there are a bunch of comments just came in at once. Why is the bass clarinet called a bass clarinet if I only play one note lower than a baritone saxophone? Which name makes more sense? So that would be, you can play one note lower than a, well, let's think about it. So a bari sax, the lowest note would be a B flat, which corresponds to the low E flat of a bass clarinet. Generally, most bari saxes today go to low A, which would be a low D. But your average professional bass clarinet, your average bass clarinet player isn't going to be playing a low E flat or low D bass clarinet. They're probably going to have a low C instrument. So that you're actually a whole note lower. And you have to think about the, so bari sax, let's say you have a sax quartet. So you have soprano, alto, tenor, and baritone. So the baritone sax is actually playing the bass part. So if you think about like a soprano, alto, tenor, bass, even though it's called a baritone sax, it's really playing the bass part. Yes, there's a bass saxophone that's lower than that, but we really don't use that as much as we use the baritone saxophone. So yeah, so the bass clarinet fills that same role. It's if you have like a clarinet quartet, you have 3 clarinets and 1 bass clarinet. You got soprano, alto, tenor, and then your bass. So that's why it's I think bass clarinet is a much more logical name. I know a lot of people say, let's rename it the tenor clarinet because it's the same pitch as the tenor saxophone, but that just doesn't, they don't really do the same things. The tenor saxophone is playing more melody, while a bass clarinet, generally you're playing the harmony and bass lines. So yeah, fun little D clarinet. I don't think I'm going to keep it just because, I mean, it's cool. It's interesting that it's in the key of D, but I just don't play Albert system enough to justify it. So I will probably end up selling it at one point. So let's move on to the next instrument. The next instrument is one that I have not played in probably, tenor clarinet is the E flat alto, or yeah, I think tenor clarinet makes a lot of sense. I know that historically it has been called the tenor clarinet. It's kind of logical when you think about it, because it's definitely more of a tenor instrument. In fact, the alto clarinet actually goes a whole tone lower than the tenor saxophone. So that would be more logical, a tenor instrument. So this is my C clarinet that I have not played in probably about a year. It's an Arioso C clarinet. So this is an instrument made by Tom Ridenour, and I believe this one was made in 2006. But what he did was he basically in 2014 he took it and he updated it to the same standards as his professional lyric C clarinet. So it's basically the same as that. The one huge advantage, though, that I really love is it doesn't have the ergonomic register key, which I absolutely hate. It just pinches my thumb. It's a great idea on paper, but it just doesn't work out in real life. But the nice thing about these clarinets is they're hard rubber, so you don't have to worry about them cracking. The 2 things I don't like, I had this clarinet, before I put it in its case, I had it polished absolutely beautiful. It looked brand new, and it's already tarnished like crazy. Also, the hard rubber started to turn from a black color into a gray color. So I'm not, unfortunately, it's not holding up as well as I would have hoped. But it's still a decent little C clarinet, very well in tune. There's a Turkish bone clarinet that is called the tenor clarinet. It's basically a straight alto instead of a curve. So that actually is an E flat clarinet. That is Alex Simu's E flat alto clarinet. And if you look closely, you might actually notice that it's actually just a Bundy E flat alto clarinet with a custom barrel and bell it was made by the Hub Factory. But yeah, he used to call it, I had a discussion with him, he used to call it an alto clarinet, but people kept commenting about how it sounds too low to be an alto instrument. So he started calling it the tenor instrument. And I think there was a forum post where he's saying he really didn't care whether people call it the alto or tenor. However, he feels it's a true tenor voice, which I agree with. It's definitely a tenor instrument. Okay, so this is the first time I'm going to be using my B flat mouthpiece. So this is really funny. So me and my mom actually went up to Boston. Was it last week? And I brought my mouthpiece with me because I wanted to go to Virtuosity Musical Instruments, and I accidentally left it in her car, so I don't have my main mouthpiece. So I have this other mouthpiece, which is a really beautiful Fodes 10K with the marble blue finish. Normally these things are like $300, but I found it on, somebody was selling it for $150, so of course I bought it. Where's my reed? It's the same reed as the E flat. Oh, no wonder this. Okay, so usually I use like a 2.5 on E flat, but I was using a 3.5, so that's probably why it sounded terrible. So I'm gonna go back and try and find a better reed somewhere. I think I have some 2. There we go. 2 reeds. That doesn't work. I don't know. I've always wanted the Phelps 10K, but I don't really know how well. This is absolutely my favorite mouthpiece. It's very, very, well, I like longer facing, so this is the 2L facing. So it's very free blowing. And one thing I found is they work really well with Rue 56 Van Doren reeds. Yeah, I love it. I've not found a mouthpiece that is better than this. And yeah, they are very expensive, but they do show up used, and you can get them used for under $200, which is a pretty good deal considering how well they play. It's like, in my opinion, one of the best mouthpieces you can get. Sorry, a bit off topic, but any recommendations for new pads and glue on a noblet bass clarinet? So the pads I've been using recently that I just repadded my bass and horn with are Pristini bass and alto clarinet pads. They are, you can buy them individually from Pristini USA. The shipping is not bad whatsoever, and they're a little bit on the softer side, but for bass clarinet, I actually like that because it conforms to the tone hole better. They're not nearly as soft as like bassoon pads, but they're generally a bit softer than what you would use on a clarinet. But yeah, you can get them in like any size from like 6 millimeters all the way up to like 50 millimeters. So just take out your existing pads and measure them. And yeah, unfortunately, you're probably gonna have to measure the pads. I don't think you can buy like a set of no blade pads, but it's definitely worth it in my opinion. But one thing, get the thin pads, because Vito instruments, or Vito, LeBlanc, and Noble instruments, they all use thin pads. So if you try to use like saxophone pads, like you can do on some bass clarinets, it's not going to work. But so yeah, that's my C clarinet. It's a very nice, sweet sounding instrument, very well in tune, very responsive too. I don't want to play too. I'm trying not to play too loud because my neighbor's up and I don't want to disturb her. But yeah, it's very free blowing. Some of Ridenour's instruments are a little bit stuffy, but this one is very responsive. Decent C clarinet, and I know the new ones they sell for about like $1,200. I picked this up for like $400. And then all I needed to do, I think all the pads are okay. I just, the cool thing about these instruments is they have synthetic cork pads. So even though this instrument has been sitting for a year, it plays perfectly. So definitely a nice C clarinet if you don't play it very often, but you just want to mess around with it. I know the ones from China, like the clones of these, are also fairly decent. But only if you really know how to tune them, because sometimes they do have intonation problems. But yeah, definitely way cheaper than like a Buffet or something. So let's move on to my B flats. So as of right now, I think I have 3 B flat clarinets. I'm trying to get down to 1 because I really don't need 3 instruments. I don't know how I ended up with 3, but yeah, 3 B flat clarinets. So I think first one I'm going to show off somewhere around here. I kind of just have like a pile of instruments all around me. Where is the B? Oh, there's one. I think like a year and a half ago. In general, would you recommend weird auxiliary instruments from China? If you know how to fix instruments yourself, then absolutely. They're a great way to learn how to fix instruments, and they're generally pretty cheap. You don't have to worry about you mess them up because they're not very expensive, and they can be made to play in tune. They absolutely can. I kind of did this. I'll show them off my G clarinet a little bit later, but yeah, it was out of tune from the factory. But I just had to fill in a few tone holes, re-level some surfaces, bend some keys, and it's now a really, really good instrument. So it was like more than a year ago, I had a video where I bought a Buffet Festival from eBay for $1,500. I never really did a fallow video because I think I only got like 20 views. But yeah, I basically, I refurbished it. I put mostly new pads on it. I didn't replace the corks because they were in good condition, but I cleaned them and I just got it regulated so it's in a really good condition. So yeah, I spent $1,500 on this. I'm probably going to end up selling it just because I have a different instrument I use now. But these things are generally worth about like $2,000, $2,500. The one thing that's nice about the green line though is you never have to worry about cracks or changes in humidity. They're very stable clarinets. So again, I'm just going to be using my Folks 10K. That happens every time I switch from like small clarinets to larger clarinets. I always mix up the fingering positions. I guess that's one reason you're supposed to buy instruments that are very similar to one another, so that doesn't happen. Let me try that again. Oops. God, I'm messing up. I need to practice. I haven't practiced in like a week. So yeah, pretty much standard stuff. It's a B-flat clarinet. Buffet festivals in general, if you're looking for like a clarinet to get you through college for your professional career, a buffet festival is something you really cannot go wrong with. They're very decent free-blowing instruments. Some of them, they're not set up well from the factory, but with a little bit of work, they all play pretty good. In general, they do play a lot better than the stock R13s. The new R13s are just garbage now. I've tried like 10 of them, and they're not as good as they used to be, unfortunately. But the festivals, fortunately, their quality is held up, even though there's higher end models like the Tosca and the Divine, and I guess now the Legend. Yeah, standard good clarinet. As I mentioned, I'm probably going to end up selling this just because I don't use it enough to justify spending $1,500 on a clarinet. I'm kind of addicted to buying instruments that I'm never going to use, unfortunately. I guess that's a good thing about knowing instrument repair, because if you buy an instrument, you don't end up using it, you can always just resell it. Okay. So I have an old R13 from the 70s, and it's amazing. Yeah, instruments from the golden era, so like 1960s, 1970s they really good build quality. They generally held up very well, and wood is very nice. Actually, you know, while we're talking about golden era R13s, let me grab my next instrument. I think I left it in my other room. Well, that's weird. Where did I leave my other clarinet? Well, that's not good. I have an R13 lying around somewhere. I have no clue where it is. That's good. Oh, I have so many instruments, I don't even know where half of them are. It's bad. I have an addiction. There's no getting around it. I need to stop. And I say that as I have like 2 instruments coming to me in like the next month. Okay, so yeah, vintage R13s are great. So this next instrument is a 1955 Buffet R13. This is one of the older ones with the unplated keywork, which I do like because when it tarnishes, it has this really nice like yellow gold color patina, which just looks absolutely beautiful. This instrument I fully restored with cork pads, new tenon corks, new key corks, basically the whole 9 yards. And I installed a Wesley Rice left-hand E-flat lever just because I really like having that key in all my instruments. I'm addicted to buying them as well. I'm about to move, and I decided it would be a good time to let go of maybe 10. Yeah, my goal has been to try and stay below 15 instruments at a time, and I have like 10 more than that, so I don't know what I'm doing. It's so impractical because I never play any of them, and then when I try to sell them, they always end up sitting on eBay for like months, and I finally sell them for less than I want to, and I just feel sad. And then I'm like, ooh, maybe I'll buy something else now, and then I never use it again. I don't know. Don't be like me. So, yeah, these you can really feel it in the weight of the wood. These instruments are made with very dense wood. This one, despite being what, like 1950s, so 65. I don't want to do math tonight. Yeah, like 65 years old, 64 years old. This thing is still in beautiful condition. The wood is nice and shiny. Yeah, these vintage R13s, if you can get them restored, they're also a pretty good value. They do tend to be a lot more expensive than other vintage clarinets of the era, but compared to a new Buffet R13, it's much better, and it's about a third of the price. So, relatively speaking, they're good instruments. And if you walk into any audition or go to any college, nobody's going to look at you funny if you have a Buffet R13. Whereas maybe if you have like a Selmer Series 9 or something, you're going to say, Selmer, I'm not a Selmer guy. I don't know what this guy's doing. So, yeah, it's always nice to have like a standard R13 in your arsenal. Oh, God. I don't know what is going on today. I don't know if it's the humidity, but I could just not hit the altissimo notes. There we go. I guess I probably should have warmed up my reed before I did this. Oh well. So yeah, very nice clarinet. Of course, comparing it to the newer festivals, these are definitely going to be a little bit more out of tune. So like things like the low F is going to be a little bit flatter, and the high C is going to be a little bit sharper. That's just your standard acoustic development over time. Newer instruments are going to be more in tune than older instruments, unfortunately. But yeah, these are still definitely usable instruments. They play great. They're very responsive, very free blowing. Again, that's what I tend to look for in instruments. And yeah, they look at that. I really like the look of the patina. Some people don't. Some people like to polish the keys up, but they tarnish really fast. So I love to leave it like this. This instrument is actually on eBay. So if any of you guys want a R13, shameless plug right there. Right. And so yeah, so this R13 was my my main instrument until about a month ago, when I bought an instrument on eBay just because it was $300 and I took a gamble on it. I didn't know it would pay off. I normally try to stick to Buffet instruments just because like I try to have all my entire collection be one brand, although that's not really possible with things like G clarinets and stuff. But this instrument was, I guess you could technically say it's a Buffet. It's not really, but I guess technically Buffet owns the company that made it. So this is the case it came in. It's a pretty cool little, nice little backpack case. And the instrument in question is a Schreiber Aura. So Schreiber, the company that makes bassoons, they also make clarinets. They mostly make German system clarinets, but they did try to make a few boom system instruments over the years. So when I first got this this instrument, I absolutely hated it, and the reason I found out was because this barrel, the bore of it is weird. It's like, I don't know if you probably can't see it, but it's got like an hourglass shape. So it contracts to like a really small diameter and then expands back out. And it is the most resistant, poor sounding barrel I've ever actually. Let me just play just to show how much I hate this thing. So yeah, it's just like, it's resistant. It sounds terrible. I don't know what they were thinking with this barrel. So I kind of like threw this instrument to the side and said, okay, I'm not gonna do anything with it. I'll probably just end up selling it for what I'm paying. And I had it listed on eBay for like $500, and nobody was buying it. So I said, maybe I'll just do some experimentation with this instrument. Maybe see if I can get it to play well. So I happen to have a Buffet R13 barrel and a Buffet vintage R13 bell. So, but when I put those on the instrument, suddenly it's now one of the best clarinets I've ever played, which is, it's weird. yeah, it's weird. It's weird the difference a barrel can make. So generally, what I find is the stock barrel will play the best. Um, and like any aftermarket barrels, sometimes you can find good barrels, but I don't usually like to use things like the Bakun MOBA barrels or Phobes barrels because I don't find that they offer any improvement over the stock barrel on a well-made instrument. Obviously, a poorly made instrument, a better barrel is going to help. But what's weird is this is advertised as a professional instrument, and the barrel was just terrible. But with an R13 barrel and an R13 bell, not only does it outplay my Buffet R13, it outplays my Buffet Festival. And the best part is this whole setup, excluding the mouthpiece, only costs $500. And that's for a professional instrument that outplays a Buffet Festival with a left-hand A-flat E-flat lever and silver-plated keys. It's everything I could want, which is part of the reason why I'm selling my, I'm going to sell my Festival and my R13. But yeah, so I was really surprised by that. So if you're looking for a decent B-flat clarinet, look for a Schreiber Aura and get a Buffet R13 barrel and bell. And I may regret asking this for my own sake, but what's your seller name on eBay? It is JD Woodwinds. And I think right now I have a, if you see a Selmer Rosewood Contra Alto, that's me. I also have an A clarinet, I have my R13, and I have a recorder. I think, oh, I also have a neck for a basset horn, one of these that I make. They're actually surprisingly popular. Actually, I'm supposed to be swabbing out my instruments, but I haven't been doing that. I guess they're not getting too, I'm not getting too much, so I probably don't need to worry about swabbing them. Okay, so that is all my small clarinets. So now we're going on. The first A clarinet that I have is actually another instrument that I have on Selmer Recital, which is a very weird instrument. I'll show you in a sec why. So the Selmer Recital is an instrument with one of the smallest bores you will ever find in a clarinet. The average clarinet bore is about 14.7, 14.6 millimeters. Smaller instruments tend to be about 14.5 millimeters. This instrument has a 14.3 millimeter bore, very small by any standard. It also has a very thick, joint. So I don't know if I play. Where's my other clarinet? Well, anyway, like you can kind of see that the wood is a lot thicker than you would typically see. And another weird thing about this instrument is it has a low F correction key. So if you're a clarinetist, you may know that when you play a low F, it tends to be a bit flat. So the really cool thing about this instrument is it has a key that goes all the way from the register key down the joint. So when you're not holding the register key and you play a low F, it opens this little vent there so that your low F is in tune. But then you might say, well, what happens if you go to the upper registers and your C is going to be sharp? Well, the cool thing is when you close the register key, it closes that key down there, so it makes it in tune. So it's a very, very complicated mechanism, but it's very ingenious. It's a great way to solve a problem other than trying to mess with the acoustics of the instrument. And it works flawlessly. I've never had any problem with it. This instrument is very weird in that the person who owned it basically went to a music store in like the 80s and said, I need the best A clarinet money can buy. And these things were like, I think the price of them was like $2,500 in the 80s, which is a lot of money, well above what Buffet would sell an A clarinet for. Of course, it had the optional key, so that made it even more expensive. And then what they did was they had keys relocated. Like, for example, this key was relocated further down on the instrument and large so that it would play a little bit more resonantly. And the like this tone hole was moved a little bit so that it'll play more in tune. And they just did like all kinds of modifications to this. And the result is a pretty decent A clarinet. I think I got this thing for like, God, it was like $1,000, but it's really, really good. You can really hear the difference between the B flat and the A with this instrument because of the smaller bore. It's got a really dark tone, and it just sounds absolutely lovely, and it plays like a dream. And if I'm butchering Mozart or Bach, it's because I am not a clarinet performer. I am an engineer and a very enthusiastic amateur. So forgive me if I mess up. I'm definitely messing up. I know I'm messing up. But yeah, very, very decent A clarinet. I am selling it actually. You'll see why in a minute. Have you had any experience with metal clarinets? So I think I said this on my last live stream, but my first true B-flat clarinet was actually a metal clarinet. It was a Sonata Deluxe, just a cheap brand of metal clarinets that I just kind of learned to repad. And other than that, I've had a Buffet metal clarinet, which is really, really good. I really regret selling that. I had a Buffet metal clarinet in the key of A, which I didn't actually restore. I kind of just left it as is and sold it. I'm also kind of regretting that too. I have a really bad problem where I just buy too many instruments, I sell them, and I regret it. And then I guess my LeBlanc Contra is metal, but that probably doesn't count. So yeah, so that's the Selmer Recital A clarinet. And I think they still make this model, but I don't, I think they still offer the low F correction key, but they don't offer, now they offer a left-hand A flat, E flat key, which if this one had, I'd probably keep it because I really like having that key in my instruments. The other things, it's got like metal cap tenons, which is nice because they're less likely to chip. And the wood itself is very dense. Other than that, there's not really too much else about it, just standard clarinet. So next, let's move on to one of my favorite instruments, one of my most unique instruments, and the one which I'm probably sad to see isn't available any longer. I gotta clean up some of these mess of cases that I have around. Okay, next instrument. Would you believe we're not even like a quarter of the way through my collection? This is crazy. Okay, so this is my Ridenour Basset clarinet. So I think I mentioned this somewhere. So it's not a real Ridenour Basset clarinet. It's a real Ridenour Lyrique A clarinet, but the Basset lower joint is a Vento. So that was like the cheap. I think a Vento Basset clarinet costs $1,400 new. But I bought one used for $1,000, and then I fixed up the A clarinet that came with the Vento, and I sold that for $600. So I basically got a Basset lower joint for $400, and then I spent I think $700 on the A clarinet. So in total, I spent like that'd be like $1,100 on a Basset clarinet that plays really well. So that actually worked out perfectly. I'll try the regular joint first, and then I'll show you the Basset joint. So that's what's really cool about this set. So let's say this is why I'm selling the other A clarinet, because I have this one. But let's say you're just playing right in an orchestra, you just need a regular A clarinet. We'll describe your lower joint, but then suddenly you need to play Mozart. Well, you've got a Basset joint there, and you don't have to worry about buying a separate instrument because you can use the A clarinet you're familiar with and just put a Basset joint in it, and it plays the same. But now you have that extra range, which is why I think this is such a great idea. And actually, Bakun, their new Basset lower joint is designed to match with one of their existing instruments, which they're acting like it's this huge innovation they made. But really, people have been doing that. Like Kadash did that with his Basset clarinet. Obviously, the Ridenour. And I think you could buy a separate Basset lower joint for your Buffet A clarinet for a while now. It's like a custom thing. You have to call them and know the right people. But I know that you can do that. So yeah, this is just a standard A clarinet. Whoops, that's not it. And one thing you can really hear about the difference between this and the Selmer is so much darker than this instrument. And this instrument is by no means a bright clarinet. It's a very dark clarinet, but the Selmer is just so much darker. It has such a rich mellow tone. And I'm starting to talk myself out of selling it, but I need to because I just have too many freaking clarinets. So yeah. So now we get to the point in the concerto where we need that lower register. And the one thing I don't like about this is I really don't like the arrangement of the Basset keys. So low E flat is where you would expect it, just like a bass clarinet. Low D is this left-hand key, pretty common. Low C sharp is up here, and then low C is your thumb key. And I think I need to replace a cork because it's clicking like crazy. But so yeah, the huge advantage of this is that it plays very similar to the other lower joint, so you don't have to really get used to a new instrument. The annoying thing is that the pinky keys are kind of close together, so sometimes you accidentally hit the wrong keys. But I think it's the same standard arrangement on most Basset clarinets, so you can get used to it. Whoa, whoops. So yeah, I always hit the wrong keys, unfortunately. Did it again. Yeah, this is an instrument that requires precision, and I don't have any precision. Oh, and that's the other annoying thing about this instrument. So if you're playing a diatonic C scale, so you play down to G, then you have to use the left-hand FC key. And the left-hand FC key is wedged right in between these two keys, which is very close together. And then you have to use the right-hand key. And I always like using right for the C, and then, or right for the F, and then left. But it makes you go left, right, then left, and then the thumb. And I just hate the fingering system, even though it's really logical. I just don't like it. I just bought an alto clarinet and should arrive by the end of the month. Much exciting. Yeah, alto clarinets. I remember the first time when I ordered my first alto clarinet. I was just so excited for it to arrive. And that was actually when I never played clarinet before that. I played saxophone, and alto clarinet was the first instrument I learned on. So yeah, I was super excited to learn it. And then when I got my I got like a Yamaha mouthpiece and like a Rico reed. And the first time I put it on and I played like a scale down to low G, I was just super excited. So yeah, hopefully you get that same excitement out of your instrument. So rather than torturing you guys by trying to play this instrument anymore, I'm just going to put it away because I don't know why I bought this. I can't play the concerto very well at all. I kind of just bought it just because I thought it would be cool to have a Basset clarinet. And then Ridenour stopped making them. So, and Vento went out of business, I think, so you couldn't get them anymore. So when I got this, I just held on to it because I'm worried that if I sell it, I'm never going to be able to find a cheap Basset clarinet ever again. I made a Basset clarinet in B flat once. The fingering wasn't really good and it wasn't very in tune, but I think maybe one day what I'm going to do is I'm going to attempt to make my own Basset clarinet, and then I'm going to sell this if what I make is better. Okay, next instrument we have probably my favorite new instrument, probably like my second or third favorite, my G clarinet. So this instrument, I basically I rebuilt it from like the ground up. So like every tonal had to be refinished, did all the tuning to it, adjusted the keys, replaced key corks, adjusted spring tensions, got everything up to the standards that I expect from a good professional level clarinet. And despite being a Chinese clarinet that costs like $600, it's a really, really good instrument. Very free blowing, very responsive. In fact, usually when I play G clarinet, I use a softer reed, so like a 2.5. But just for shits and giggles, I'm going to try and play with the same reed that I use for B flat, which normally on G clarinet would be very, very resistant. Let's see how well it works. Yeah, even with a 3.5 reed, this instrument is very free blowing and responsive, which just says something about the build quality of the instrument. Obviously, the acoustics are, aside from the tuning issues I had to fix, the acoustics are pretty good. It's got a good bore. Other than that, the keys are a little on the soft side, unfortunately. Nothing has really fallen out of adjustment just from me playing it. So hopefully they held up pretty well. It's not as comfortable as I would like. Like originally I made I really appreciate your playing. If anything, it's more interesting than a professional musician showing off his fancy instruments because they can make anything sound good. Yeah, like if anything, I don't want to be one of those guys who has like who spends like hundreds of thousands of dollars on like $10,000 on a heckaphone or something. I know they don't cost it that, but and then just to say, oh, I'm rich, I can afford it. Any instrument I buy, I don't buy like something in good condition. I buy something that's broken, that's neglected, so that at least I can say, okay, I took this instrument that nobody wanted, it was tossed aside, and I was able to fix it and make it into a beautiful playing instrument. Like I just love saying that. Like just like this, like a lot of people still think Chinese instruments are just junk. But I like being able to say that, yeah, 10K for a heckaphone is cheap. They're like what, $30,000 now. I like being able to say that I took this clarinet from China that everybody thought, oh, Chinese clarinets will never play in tune. They'll never sound good. And I can make a good sounding, well in tune instrument. But yeah, like I was saying, so the ergonomics, before they were bad. They're a lot better now. Like I adjusted the right hand pinky keys so they're farther up, so they're a little bit more comfortable to play. The one thing I'm still a little annoyed about is the right hand finger stretch. It's fairly uncomfortable. It's a bit much. I did use the one of these Ridenour thumb saddles, and that does help. But I'm kind of thinking of ways to like try and relocate the tone hole. Actually, before I had this, what I did was I had one of the Albert System G clarinets, and I took the ring key assembly from an A clarinet, and I put that on there, and it fit perfectly on the tone holes. And that made a really comfortable. That instrument was very comfortable. I actually ended up trading that to Brett Newton for a bell. Hopefully, he's enjoying that instrument still. So other than that, it's a decent G clarinet. Obviously, Bohm System G clarinets are still very, very new. Before, you couldn't even really get them for under $3,000 now. China has kind of flooded the market with cheap instruments. So if you're like a clarinetist who likes weird instruments, a G clarinet is definitely something you should consider putting in your arsenal. They're just really cool instruments to have. I wish I had some more music to play for you guys. I had some really good Mozart music, and I don't know where I put it. Let me be right back. It's over on my organ right now. Oh, nice. I'll be right back. I gotta grab some. This is a piece from Magic Flute, Act 2. It's originally designed for basset horn, but it sounds very good on the G clarinet, which is a very similar register. So yeah, very sweet, mellow sounding clarinet. I really love. I've always been interested in the G clarinet. Now that I have one, I think it's a really great underutilized instrument. So anyway, I could talk all day about G clarinets, but let's move on to the next set. And I should probably swab this one out because it's wood and I actually care about it. And originally, when I bought this instrument, the barrel actually cracked when I got it. But fortunately, the person I bought it from was nice enough to send me 2 new barrels, and so far neither of the wood has held up very well. It's obviously not as good a quality as the wood you would see on a French Buffet clarinet, but it's still well finished. It's fairly dense. Hopefully, it will hold up. And the silver plating is also fairly nice too. Originally, when I got it, the silver plating was kind of dull, but after a quick, I just polished it up a bit, and the keys look absolutely beautiful. They're fairly well finished. I haven't found any like loose keys. I remember being a little on the softer side, but I mean, when I say the keys are soft, I mean like soft by like LeBlanc standards. Their keys are crazy. Like it's about as soft as you would see on like an older French sensual clarinet, like a Malern, something like that. So not nearly as bad as you would think from a Chinese instrument. You can tell how much I care about this thing by how long I'm taking to put it away. Okay. Wow. Gone over instruments in G. So next is instruments in the key of F. My favorite clarinet, member of the clarinet family, and the instrument that I am most proud to have fixed, my 1967 Buffet Basset horn. So the story of how I got this instrument is actually pretty, well, it's fairly typical for me, but so I was just browsing eBay one day and I saw this listing that said bass clarinet, alto clarinet, basset clarinet, buffet, something like that, with a bunch of keywords that really didn't make sense. And I kind of looked at it and I said, oh, it's an alto clarinet. And then I noticed the lower joint. It was like, that's a lot of pad cups for an alto clarinet. And then I started to look at it more and I realized, wait, this isn't an alto clarinet. This is a basset horn. And by this point, I was like pretty much freaking out because I rarely ever see basset horns on eBay. And usually when you do, it's like some guy trying to get like $7,000 for it. Like there's a basset horn on eBay now. It's a LeBlanc, but they want $7,000 for it, which is absolutely insane for a LeBlanc. But this one was only $1,200, which is still a lot of money, but affordable for a basset horn. It's crazy. I was thinking, okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to buy this instrument. I'm going to resell it for like $5,000. Make a cool like a $3,500 after eBay fees, and I use that money to get like a car or something because I didn't really have a car at that point. But when I got it, it did have pads on it, but it was in pretty rough shape. It didn't play. It played, and even though it was resistant and kind of stuffy, it just had such a beautiful tone that I just I decided, you know what, even though I'm not going to make any money, I'd rather just keep the instrument just because it's so rare and unique. So I kind of kept it, and unfortunately, this instrument is probably the one I had to put the most work into, just because it's had so many problems. The first thing I had to do was the first problem I had with this instrument was finding a mouthpiece. So I'll show you. The problem with these Buffet Basset horns is the mouthpiece receiver is a lot smaller than any B-flat clarinet. So you try to fit a mouthpiece in there, it's not going to work. These instruments are designed for a normal B-flat mouthpiece, by the way. At least they're supposed to be. So that didn't work. So, but basically what I do is I defined the mouthpiece that played the best on this instrument, and then I had to fit the cork to that, and I had never used that mouthpiece on any other instrument ever again. And I was just playing around with some mouthpieces that I had laying around, and I happened to pick this one out of a case, and I was just like, oh, it says India hard rubber. That sounds weird. It's just some cheap mouthpiece. I'll try it on. And it was by far the best mouthpiece I've ever played. And I went and looked it up, and then I realized that these India hard rubbers are apparently like extremely rare. and they're like they sold for like $200 a mouthpiece for like this old vintage mouthpiece. So I didn't realize it was something rare, but it worked perfectly with the bass and horn. So I was very happy about that. It's kind of nice when things work out like that, you know. I've also one big problem with these instruments is the lower register. So notes like the low D, the low C sharp, the low E flat are extremely flat. At least they were. So basically, what I had to do was I had to enlarge the tone holes, and I had to add a little bit of a flare to the bore to match another basset horn that I took measurements from. But the last thing I had to do was the bell. So this bell is actually not original to the instrument. It's a bell from a Buffet alto clarinet of the same era. But the tone hole is larger here, so the low C sharp is actually more in tune. It plays a lot better than the original bell. And one little nice thing was that it was actually in better condition than the original bell. So now the instrument is like in mint condition. I replated all the tone holes, replated all the keys, refinished all the tone holes, oiled the wood, replaced all the pads, replaced all the key corks, tightened all the mechanisms, tuned everything. Just put hours and hours and hours into this instrument, and I'm finally left with probably one of the best basset horns I've ever tried. I mean, granted, I've only tried like 5 basset horns or so, but it sounds absolutely amazing. It plays great. So with this instrument, I do have to use. Hey, what's up? So I do have to use softer reeds. So instead of a 3.5, I'll be using a 2.5 reed. Because if I try to use a 3.5, well, actually, no, I'll show you. This is my default liquor channel. So when I try to use a harder reed, because the instrument's just so long, it doesn't quite work out well. Oh, okay. I guess it worked. Whatever. So yeah, you might notice that the basset horn sounds a lot reedier than like the G clarinet. Practicing Rhapsody in Blue in Summertime. Nice. I could never get the glissando down. Yeah, let me try it in basset horn. I'm gonna mess it up, but let me see if I can do Rhapsody in Blue. No. Kind of. I didn't do it very well. But yeah, this is one of the it's actually with the softer reed, M14 and got the gliss. Nice. Yeah, if you can master that gliss, that's pretty cool. I used to be able to do it, but I haven't been practicing, so I can't do it anymore. So now let me play that same Act 2 of Magic Flute. You can't gliss on a close hole instrument, no. Like you can kind of trick it by lifting the key very slowly, but it never works out as well as you would hope. I know I think I've heard like videos of people doing it on a bass clarinet, but you have to be really, really, really trying. And my embouchure just isn't that developed. Yeah, I get it. Anyway, Mozart. Oh, okay. Well, that went better than I thought it would. How low do basset horns go? Low C, down to a low C, which sounds like a concert F. So. I can't play that IC. Okay. There we go. That's the IC. So wait, Jared, the bassoon like basset horn works great. Awesome. So yeah, I actually ended up selling that bassoon basset horn I made. Hopefully, I'll try to make some more of them because it worked pretty well actually. So I want to see if I can make like a serious one out of wood, but that would probably be long in the far future. But the cool thing about basset horns is because they have a narrow bore, the higher register is a lot easier, and they do play pretty well in the lower register, but they really shine in the upper register. So yeah, as you can hear, like I could not play a double high C on B flat clarinet, but I can do it on basset horn somewhat, not perfectly. But yeah, they sound really beautiful in the upper register. And ironically, the lowest note of the basset horn is actually a semitone lower than the lowest note of an alto clarinet, at least a standard alto clarinet. So, like, if we were thinking about this logically, which is never the best to do with instruments, the basset horn could make the E flat alto clarinet obsolete. Yet, as we see, the E flat alto clarinet is obviously more used, and at least in wind bands. I mean, obviously in orchestral work, you're never going to see a alto clarinet, but when in like the concert bands and what you're more likely to see on a regular basis, you see more alto clarinets. But yeah, so that's the basset horn, probably my favorite instrument, the one I put the most time into, and the one I'm definitely most proud of. I can play up to an E9. That's crazy. And I've never I feel like if I put some time in trying to really play like the super altissimo, I could probably do it. It's just I've never seen a reason to play it that high. I mean, yeah, it'd be cool to do it just to be like, hey, look how high I can play, but I feel like I would just hurt people's ears. But I'm sure there's uses for it. I mean, being able to say you have 5-octave range is really, or like 5+ octaves of range on a clarinet is really, really cool. And I'm probably going to take the most time putting this instrument away because I like wipe down everything and make sure it's in pristine condition. I want it to last as long as possible. The one thing I don't like, I didn't explain the fingering system actually. So I actually like this fingering system better. Playing the altissimo G and the E flat. Yeah, I'm not even going to attempt that. So this fingering system for the lower notes is, it sounds strange to anybody who hasn't played basset horn. If you've seen my video on the Selmer basset horn, you'll know it's, so this key up here, right below the F C key, is the low E flat. The low D is this key right here, which is not an alternate A flat E flat letter. It is the low D, or you can play it with the thumb. The low C sharp is this key here. Wait, no. The low C sharp is where your E flat key would be. So yeah, so like if you're playing like a bass clarinet, alto clarinet, you would reach down here for low E flat. No, that's low C sharp. And then low C, you play a low C sharp, and then you use the left hand F C key to articulate that last mechanism on the bell. So it's kind of weird if you're not. Oh, and the spring fell out. Great. So I gotta fix that. Yeah, I'm constantly like, I won't play my instrument for a few months, and then I'll pick it up and I'll say, oh crap, it's broken again. So then I gotta fix it. I'll play it and I'll put it back, and then I won't play it again for a few months. That's part of why I need to get rid of some of my instruments. But actually, I think this basset horn is actually probably one of the instruments I play not as often as my B flat, but actually more often than my bass, just because it's so. It's definitely one of the easier instruments to play, which generally basset horns are very resistive. They have a lot of resistance, but with a softer reed, and if you have a good mouthpiece, it can be very free blowing and they very responsive. And I think a lot of people who play basset horn, they don't own their own instruments, so So they'll pick up an instrument and it'll be, they'll just basically have to use their own mouthpiece and probably use harder reeds because they don't really know about using softer reeds. And then they'll say, oh, this instrument is stuffy, it's terrible, it's hard to play. But if you really want to play basset horn well, you have to really spend a lot of time with the instrument. Obviously, I'm not very good at use. I'm an amateur. The only reason I own a basset horn is because I just got a really, really good deal on eBay. And yeah, I know very few people are going to be that lucky. But yeah, I think basset horn is definitely another underutilized instrument. I think they can be used to great effect because they just have such a, the tone is so different than B flat clarinet or bass clarinet. A lot of people say that instruments like the alto clarinet are obsolete because the bass clarinet can cover the notes, and that's true, but it doesn't have the same, can't provide the same tonal colors as the alto clarinet or to a greater extent the basset horn. So yeah, I definitely think fortunately there's no cheap. Well, I did make the first, as far as I know, I made the first plastic basset horn, which the owner is now the person commenting, Super Sub Octo Contra Alto Bass, now owns the first plastic basset horn, which I think would be a really good concept. Like, because here's like a hypothetical situation that I think would be really cool. So LeBlanc used to make a basset horn with an alto clarinet bore that shared a lot of keywork with the alto clarinet. Well, LeBlanc's obviously out of business, at least LeBlanc France. LeBlanc USA is still around. So what they could do is, let's say they took their design for their Vito alto clarinet, which is, it's not called a Vito anymore, but it is still being manufactured. Let's say they took that design and they made a LeBlanc basset horn based off that design. So like a Vito basset horn. It would be plastic. It would have the same fingerings as LeBlanc, the same bore, but it would be cast plastic, and it would use as many keys from the alto clarinet as possible. If they could offer an instrument like that for like $4,000, like a student instrument, maybe like do like a pair where you can get 2 basset horns for $7,000 as an instrument that colleges could buy, or possibly even musicians who are looking to experiment. I think that would be a great option for to play a lot of the repertoire from Mozart and other composers like Strauss that is out there. And even though it would be a student instrument, it would be an instrument that's used in educational and professional settings, and would be very practical and affordable. But I don't think that's ever going to happen, just because the tooling cost to try and start manufacturing basset horns is too high. I mean, maybe one day somebody will send a basset horn to China and they'll copy it. Because I'm assuming that's how it happens. Like, somebody takes an instrument, they send it to somebody in China, an engineer gets the dimensions, and then they set up the tooling and they start manufacturing it, which is why every Chinese clarinet is, in one way or another, based off an instrument that already exists. But I didn't even use this reed when I opened it up. Whoops, that was dumb. But yeah, and so I'm assuming somebody would have to send a basset horn to China, which I don't know if they would be willing to do. So we may never see a cheap basset horn. And even if we did, the instruments would probably need a lot of work to play well. Even this French instrument needed a lot of tuning to, especially in low register, to get to play perfectly. So it's hard to say that a Chinese basset horn would be. So we talked about basset horns. Now we are on to the instruments that I started playing on originally, the alto clarinet. So now I have 2 alto clarinets, which sounds pretty crazy. Why would you need, I don't even really need 1, why do I need 2? Well, they're actually both buffets, and they're both from around the same era, but they have one feature that's different between the 2 of them that is actually really interesting. So the first instrument is actually one I bought like a few months ago. I was just browsing the web, not even eBay, and I happened to see an instrument for sale, a Buffet alto clarinet for $750. And the last time I sold an alto clarinet made by Buffet on eBay, it sold for $1,500. So I thought, hey, I could buy this alto clarinet from a music store that's already been refurbished and turn it around and flip it for $1,500 and make $700. And then I bought it, and I was like, oh, it's actually not a bad instrument. So this is a Buffet Academy model alto clarinet. And now what an Academy model is when Buffet has an instrument with a defect, like a crack or like a place that had to be RTC'd, or like a RTC mean return to conformance. It's a manufacturing term for like if there's a defect in the instrument and they need to fix it, they obviously can't sell it for full price. So what they'll do is, instead of marking it with the normal Buffet logo, they'll put a little Academy model right below the logo, and they'll sell it for a reduced price. And this instrument is technically a Buffet radio model alto clarinet, but it has the Academy designation. So that does bring the resale down a bit, but it's basically a Buffet professional alto clarinet, so it plays like you expect. And this instrument is nice because it was just replated, a full repad, and it just looks absolutely beautiful. And for 750 bucks, I mean, there's only one thing I don't like, which is the middle B is fairly sharp, so I gotta figure out a way to fix that. Other than that, for 750 bucks, like, this is not a bad alto clarinet. And even though I was originally going to sell it, I think I'm going to end up keeping it. Because my girlfriend actually plays alto clarinet in our wind ensemble, so I think she'll be using it. So for a mouthpiece, I use a vintage no-name mouthpiece that I refaced myself to give it a long facing so that it would match my B-flat mouthpiece. And for reeds, I just use a Van Doren 3 blue box standard alto clarinet reeds. And I actually, I've tried like a Clark Phobes alto clarinet mouthpiece, and I did not like it at all. I really like mouthpieces with long facings, but unfortunately I can't really find somebody who makes a mouthpiece like that, so I kind of had to make my own. And I'm not the greatest mouthpiece or facer, but I got something that plays pretty well, so I'm very happy with it. Anyway, you may notice around the B, so let me play that again. You can hear a little bit of a hissing, and that's because this instrument only has a single register vent. So that means that notes around B or notes around the lower clarion register are going to be a bit sharp, and they're going to be a little bit stuffy. Although it's not terrible on this instrument. On some instruments, it's much worse. But other than that, it's a very nice free-blowing alto clarinet. One thing I absolutely love is that it came with a floor peg, so I didn't even have to solder one. I know most instruments I'll solder them, but on expensive instruments, I generally don't like to solder floor peg brackets because it kind of ruins the originality. Because this is a Buffet instrument, but it's got a Selmer floor peg holder, so that kind of bothers me sometimes. But since somebody already did it, I don't care. Floor peg on alto clarinet is very, very nice to have. So this one has like an extra long floor peg. So even if you're sitting on like a high chair, like this is as high as it'll go. So even if you're sitting on like a stool, like there's one situation where I was playing contrabass clarinet and alto clarinet, and I had to use a stool because my LeBlanc I can't sit in a normal seat and play it. So it was nice to be able to put this instrument up that high, and I can almost stand and play it. Yeah, for 750 bucks, I'm glad I found this thing. Other than that, it's a Buffet professional level alto clarinet. I will say that these Buffet vintage alto clarinets are some of the best you can get. I mean, I've tried LeBlancs, I've tried Selmers. They're okay, but the Buffets are just much more free-blowing. They're generally pretty well in tune, and they have a really nice build quality. Unfortunately, they are definitely the most expensive of the vintage alto clarinets, although they're still a vintage professional Buffet alto clarinet is going to be a lot cheaper than a professional bass clarinet. And in many cases, a lot cheaper than a professional B-flat clarinet. Like try finding a R13 for $750 that's been restored. You'll never find one. So yeah, there are definitely deals to be had out there with the alto clarinet. So if you're a musician on a budget and you're looking for, or if you're a clarinetist on a budget and you're looking for maybe an instrument to to play an auxiliary member of the clarinet family. Maybe you don't have enough money for a bass clarinet. An alto clarinet is a really good option because they're just so they're not as cheap as they used to be. They've gone up in price, but they're still relatively cheap compared to other members of the clarinet family. So they're a if you like weird instruments and you like to experiment with different members of the clarinet family, it's definitely a great place to start. It's where I started on this alto clarinet was the first instrument the first clarinet I learned to play. I don't know what to say other than that. So I guess I'll start talking about the next instrument. It went up because bread is spreading love. Yeah, actually, there's definitely been like a renaissance of alto clarinets in recent years. I mean, there's been a renaissance of most rare instruments. Like, God, like how often was the bass oboe used 20 or 30 years ago? Now it's definitely thanks to like partially thanks to cheap instruments coming from China, but also definitely because of the internet, because where people are aware of these instruments. Like if you're a band nerd in like in the 80s, there's a chance maybe you've never heard of a Heckle phone. But I mean, if you're a band nerd like me and you can look up every single instrument that pretty much ever existed, you can learn in detail about thanks to the internet. So I think that's part of why some of these instruments these obscure instruments are starting to see the light of day again. And places like eBay, like where are you going to buy an alto clarinet? If you go to your local music store and you say, I want to buy an alto clarinet, and then they're gonna flip through a catalog and say, oh well, Buffet offers this alto clarinet. They're our preferred supplier, and it's going to be $10,000. You're going to say no. But if you go on eBay and you search an alto clarinet, it's like, oh, look at all these Bundys and the Noblés and LeBlancs I can buy for under $1,000. So now these instruments are available to amateurs like me. Like I'm not a professional player, and yet I have all these weird, wacky instruments. And I think it's just great that we have access to these instruments. So yeah, we're definitely living in like a renaissance of obscure instruments. Unfortunately, that does mean the prices are going up. So get them while you can. How far along are we in your collection? You might need to plan an intermission. 8. Have everything. Oh, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We've got 6 instruments, 7, 8 instruments left to go. Don't worry. If you can't stick around till the end of the video, I'll be posting this live stream on my YouTube channel. I didn't do that last week, unfortunately, but I'll do it this week. So if you want to come back and watch the video later, feel free to do that. Don't need to stay up super late. If you got stuff to do, I understand. But anyway, let's go on to my next Buffet. So that one was a 1958 alto clarinet. I doubt you own a Contrabass horn. I've never seen a Contrabass horn, although I would love one. I know I've seen parts for contra alto clarinet in low Fs. I would love to find an instrument like that. So this is the older version of that instrument, basically. It's a Buffet alto clarinet, E flat again, low pitch, has all the same features as left hand A flat, E flat. However, this one is really nice in that it has a fully automatic double register mechanism like a bass clarinet. So, oh, and I left the neck in the other room. I'll be back. I've been here since 7:15 and it's now 9:23. Yeah, sorry. Sometimes these kind of go on for a long time. But yeah, if you want to come back and watch it later, I'll have the live stream posted. You can catch up whenever you want. So the neck I got with this instrument. What piece did you? God, I don't remember. It was a very long time ago. I was looking through the my college's catalog of really old music, and it was like F contrabass clarinet. I forget what it was. I wish I could remember. I think I remember reading something about it in Rice's book from Clarinet de Morte contrabass clarinet. I thought he said there was a piece that used F contrabass clarinet, but I've never really looked into it too much. But anyway, yeah. So this is the basically the same as the other instrument, although obviously it has unplated keys, and the fully automatic double register mechanism makes all the difference. So this is like the feature that makes a professional bass clarinet a good professional bass clarinet, and it's very rare to see it on an alto clarinet. So Yamaha instruments have them, but other than that, even the newer $15,000 Buffet prestige level alto clarinets do not have this feature. So it's kind of cool to see it on this instrument that's like 60 years older. So again, I'm just going to use the same mouthpiece, and I'm going to show you. I'm not going to play anything too long because yeah, this is kind of going along. But I'll just show you the middle B. Oh, let me adjust the joints right. That'll probably help. This instrument, unfortunately, has not been restored. I did kind of replace a few pads, but it does play okay. What the heck just happened? Great. So yeah, this happens. I haven't played this thing in like months, and now it's completely out of adjustment. So that's kind of unfortunate. Well, I can't. Okay, so I guess I can't play this one. But what I was going to say is that the clarinet register is much easier to play due to the double register mechanism. And I should probably just restore this instrument already because it's a decent alto clarinet. But then I got to figure out which one I want to sell. I'm probably going to sell the other one eventually and keep this one, but I haven't figured that out yet. All right, so we're getting close to we're now firmly in low clarinet territory. So the next instrument I have is my bass clarinet, or at least one of my bass clarinets. I'm not going to put, so both of my, I have two bass clarinets. Both of them are, whoops, that was a mouthpiece. Both of them are Selmers. This one I'm just going to show just because it's kind of, I'm not going to play it, but I'm just going to show because it's kind of interesting. So this was a Selmer bass clarinet that was fully modified by Charles Bay. So he makes mouthpieces and bass clarinet necks, but he also does overhauls. And what he did was he basically like he undercut every tone hole in the instrument and then did tuning and voicing. And then his signature thing that he does is he installs like a penny on the touch piece here, so that it's supposed to be more comfortable to play. I don't like it too much, but it's kind of cool. But yeah, that's just a cool little quirky bass clarinet. I think I paid like $200 for this, which is a steal for a Selmer bass clarinet. And I'm also in the process. I was building I kind of built a low D extension for it. It's not completely finished, but I was going to build a low C extension, but I don't know if I'll get to that. Okay, so yeah, it's just a typical low D, almost weird bass clarinet. Nothing to see. Okay, so my next instrument is probably the one that I use. I guess it would be my main instrument because I'm mainly a bass clarinetist. So this is another Selmer bass clarinet. It is a 1955 Selmer Model 31 bass clarinet. So basically that's just the designation. That means that it's the professional model. It's the top of the line model. It has a low C extension. So basically just a Selmer bass clarinet, a low C extension. So it's basically built almost exactly like the low E flat. Actually, if you look at the wood, you can see it's two different pieces of wood that were grafted together. But it just has this extra low C extension that's operated by these three thumb keys. Nothing fancy. Eventually, I do want to get a better bass clarinet because I don't really like that mechanism. But it's a fairly decent bass clarinet, nice and free blowing, and it was. Most importantly, it was cheap, and that's kind of the trend of all my instruments. They're cheap for what they are. Somewhere my mouthpiece. Shoot, where did I leave my mouthpiece? That's not good. I can't find my. Oh, you know what? I think I left it in the other room. Okay, I'll be back. I gotta grab my bass clarinet mouthpiece. looks like I'll have to open a new read because I can't. That's number 4. Kind of the unfortunate thing about having so many instruments, I just have parts and mouthpieces and all kinds of stuff just laying around everywhere. I never know where anything is. Come on, I can't at least start. Embarrassing. Bass clarinet is my main instrument. I don't even have a mouthpiece ready. Yeah, okay. Let's see if this works. I think this is a Barry sax reed. See if it works. Okay. So that's kind of the annoying thing about having a double register mechanism bass. You have to make sure the register vents are aligned perfectly so that when one closes, the other opens. So yeah, this is kind of a, even though it's a 1955 bass clarinet, it's got all the bells and whistles. It's got, well, that were available in 1955. It's got a double register mechanism, left hand A flat, E flat, articulated C sharp, E sharp. Basically, the only thing missing from it being a full dome would be the alternate E flat, B flat. But other than the weird fingering for the low notes, so I just explained that. So to play the low notes, you finger a low E flat, and then you press one of the 3 keys, and you have to hold down the low E flat the whole time, which is kind of annoying. So how I got this instrument, I bought it on eBay. It was $2,000, which is super cheap for a bass clarinet, and it's actually in really, really good condition. The problem was the intonation was terrible. It was absolutely terrible, and I just could not figure out why. Eventually, what I had to do was I took some cork and I actually glued it inside the neck to make the diameter of the bore smaller, and that actually brought the 12ths in tune. And then I had to go into the lower joint and I had to install all these, I don't know if you can see them, but I installed tuning crescents. And then in the bell, I had to stuff you can see I have a piece of cork that I drilled a tube in to kind of extend the bore, because otherwise low C was 50 cents sharp, which is absolutely crazy. I don't know how it left the factory like that, but yeah, that's probably why it was so cheap. It was terrible. It took so long to get it in tune, but now that it's in tune, it's a decent instrument. Unfortunately, I had to use the low E flat key too. Yeah, eventually I would like to get, I don't know, I'm looking at a Kessler. I do really, really want the new Tosca, but I cannot afford $12,000. And the used prices for newer low C bass clarinets are just through the roof. Like even an instrument like this would cost $5,000 in the condition it's in now, all fixed up. And that's just, even that, like the most I've ever spent. This is the most I've ever spent on an instrument, about $2,000. But yeah, even though it's older and it had all this problem, I think I got all the problems fixed out. And I like the Kessler, but save for the Tosca. Yeah, if I win the lottery, or if my engineering degree pays off and I come up with an invention and I become rich, that's my dream. Anyway. I'll use my floor. I don't know where my floor bag is. So yeah, it's a very nice, good free blowing bass clarinet. Yeah, that's the thing to do if you're going to buy a bass clarinet. Go to, well, I don't know how it works now with the new cities regulation. I've heard like the import passes or the import licenses are quite expensive if you're just importing one instrument. But at least before that, it was definitely the thing to do. Go to France, pick out an instrument, get it adjusted at the factory, choose the neck. The import markup is ungodly. Yeah. Choose the cool thing about, like, if you go to the Selmer factory, you can basically take like 10 necks from other bass clarinets and just try them all out and figure out this one plays the best, and then just match it to make your perfect instrument basically. And it's still cheaper than buying one in the US. Unfortunately, I mean, if I was a professional musician, I would definitely do something like that. But since I don't make any really money off playing instruments, I can't justify it. This is just a very, I'm an enthusiastic amateur, I like to say. So fortunately for me, it's just used instruments, the ones that I can afford. But yeah, this is a nice, decent bass clarinet. If I do ever get the chance to upgrade to something new, I probably will. But even if I don't, it's still a great bass clarinet. The one thing about these older Selmers is a lot like the center tones. They're very great for jazz. They're free blowing. They have a huge sound. Should I start posting videos? Yeah, if you have stuff you want to talk about, definitely make YouTube videos. I mean, because I remember like I used to use this channel for posting videos for instruments I was selling to eBay. But then when I looked on there, I was getting like my first video was like a bass clarinet, a Con Lodi bass clarinet. And when I looked at it, I was surprised it had like 2,000 views. So I just thought, yeah, maybe I'll start making videos. Just, I don't know if people will be interested in like fixing instruments. And I'm glad I did it. It's nice chatting with you guys, honestly. And it's nice seeing people have like positive response to what I do and my projects. And I just love sharing that things with people. So I would definitely, if you want to make a YouTube video, go for it. Hello, how you doing? Okay, so that's my bass clarinet. Now I could pull out my box of bass clarinets that I salvaged parts for the octo contrabass, but I'm not going to bore you with sitting through 10 Vito bass clarinets that are missing half their keys. So I think time to move on from bass clarinets. So the next instrument I have, I don't know if you guys want to see it. It's just a Bundy contra alto. It's not really interesting. It's missing the neck, because what I want to do is I want to take a bass clarinet neck and I want to make a Bundy that'll take a bass clarinet mouthpiece like the Buffet contra alto. But I haven't really finished that project. Wait, so yes, you do want to see? Okay, fine. I'll show you. Get out the Bundy. I did end up repadding it, and it's missing it's missing a key over here, so I got to make one of those. But what time is it for me? It's only 9:39. I stay up till midnight anymore. So I don't think the video's going on that much longer. Yeah, so that's the Bundy. So now for the really cool instrument, the Selmer Recital A. Put away some of this. Like, wait till let me get these. The case that it comes in, and it's freaking heavy. That's one thing I don't like. I mean, the Rosewood contra altos are very, very pretty, but they're heavy and they're kind of impractical to carry around. Like, I'm constantly in fear that the handle on this case is gonna rip off just from the sheer weight of the thing, and my contra is gonna go flying on to the ground. I've got my arms hurt now. Bedtime is 4 a.m. Got too much stuff to do. Nice. Yeah, I pulled some all-nighters in college. So I understand what you, watching a stream while practicing and doing homework. I always find I'm more productive when I'm like, if I have like YouTube videos going in the background. Kind of like stimulates my thought. I got sheet music for this year. It looks like IKEA furniture instructions. So yeah, so this is the lower joint. So it's a Selmer rosewood contra alto clarinet. It only has a range to low E. It was made in 1955, and that's all I could say about it. I had to handle rip off of server. Oh God, that's way more expensive than this thing. Did the case like open up or did it come out? Because I've always been in fear of that. That's why whenever I carry a case, I always face it so that the case opens up towards my leg, so that if it does, if something like a latch breaks, I can like quickly pull it and like maybe save the instruments. I've only had one instrument. I've only had a case open up completely one time and dump my instruments on the floor, and that was when I had a set of Ridenour B flat and A clarinets. It's the same A clarinet, but I had a different B flat. And yeah, I kind of like chipped the lower tenon. But fortunately, I was able to fix it. But yeah, that was not fun. I want to find my school's contralto and basset horn. Yeah, if your school has those instruments, just find an excuse to go and play them. Because like even if you don't need to, like come on, like you should go and play like every instrument you can just for the fun of it. Because I mean, even if you never play basset horn again, it would still be cool to say like, oh, I played basset horn once, and then at least you know. Yeah, because like at my school, like all the old instruments, I pulled them out, I played them around with them, and I just messed around, and it's always fun doing that. I was carrying it down the hall and handle ripped in half, the horn completely chipped. Ooh, that sucks. Really, really sucks. And that's because there's so few Sarusophones. Oh my god, poor thing. Okay, so this is the rosewood contralto. I just recorked it, so the middle joint is a bit stiff. Ah, shoot. Come on. Good enough. That's not, I mean, I can see the appeal of the two-piece design, but just putting the lower tenon and getting everything aligned. I find that I have to have the cork really tight in order for it to stay in adjustment well, but if it's really tight, like you just saw, it's pretty hard to put on. Maybe I should probably shave down that cork a little bit. That's probably a project for another day. Actually, I have this instrument listed on eBay, so I have to do that actually pretty soon. But yeah, I basically what I did was I recorked this instrument. I did some adjustment, and I just got it playing. And it definitely plays better than the Bundy. But the reason I'm selling it is just because I never play contralto, so I just can't justify owning it anymore. Should probably use the 4 peg, but man. Oops. My reed's not the best, but it's a very nice, mellow, deep sounding instrument. It kind of sounds bass clarinet-y, but it just has such a more rich, like a deep tone in it. It's a very nice instrument. Again, underutilized. I can only think of like a few pieces I played that had a contralto part. And the problem is, if you're playing contra clarinet in a wind ensemble, chances are you're doubling on contralto and contrabass, because some pieces have a contralto part, some pieces have a contrabass part, and some pieces have neither. So it's kind of the unfortunate thing. You have to carry 2 giant cases to rehearsal sometimes, or 3 if you're doubling a bass clarinet, like I've done before. It's a huge pain in the ass. Oh, great. I'll do that joints. Yes, I'll definitely have to shave down this cork later. There we go. Everything about these low clarinets is just a hassle. Whoops. Don't want to break it. I was scared of my high school band director. He was 6'8", big man who was the person at school who wields the paddle. Oh wait, my alto clarinet has a leak like the cork between the upper and lower joint. That's why it sounds bad. Yeah, alto clarinet is one of those instruments. It definitely helps to be in have it in good regulation, but a lot of the instruments you see aren't in good regulation. So one of the reasons to own your own alto clarinet is just it's cheap, and you can get your instrument fixed up, so you know you have a good alto clarinet. Like I think a lot of the reasons people don't like alto clarinet because a lot of the instruments they're exposed to are just not in good condition and they're not well regulated, so they sound poor. Okay, there we go. Let me get this thing out of the way so I don't have to deal with it. Okay. I love low clarinets, but they're just such a, I hate when they're heavy and they're such a hassle. My band director is afraid of me. Oh, that's good. I hope. Anyway, next instrument, my last clarinet that I actually bought, my last finished clarinet. So, my B flat contrabass clarinet. I don't think I did a video on this ever since I painted it. So yeah, this is what it looks like now. It's I did this like a satin silver gray metallic. I guess it would be like a metallic gunmetal finish, I think is the name. It's like automotive paint, so it's nice and durable. And the reason I painted is because the finish was so pitted and scratched up and damaged that it's just I didn't think it was worth trying to like strip it and nickel plate it, just because I don't like my nickel plating bath is so small that I couldn't fit any parts. I'd have to brush plate it, and trying to brush plate an instrument this big would just be a pain in the ass. But yeah, other than that, I repadded it with my own homemade synthetic pads. I think I had a video on how I make the pads. So I repadded with that, and now seals absolutely perfectly. It's a very, very good playing contrabass clarinet. I think I paid like $900 for this, $1,000 or so. The one thing you want to look out for if you're buying these older alto or contrabass clarinets is look for one with this key right here. If it has a key at the very top of the crook, don't buy it, because there are some of these instruments that, well, this means that it has a double register mechanism or double register vent mechanism. And there are some instruments that only have one single register vent for the whole instrument. And the problem with that, it is going to be extremely, extremely out of tune. Like some notes were almost a semitone off on the instrument I played. It was my college's instrument had that problem, and it was just absolutely, completely out of tune. There was no saving it. I just don't know why LeBlanc would even let something like that out the factory. But yeah, so I basically repadded this instrument, refinished it, just did everything to it, and it plays pretty well. The only bummer is I do have to stand up to play it because the mouthpiece receiver is too high up to play when sitting. Oh, come on, don't tell me this one's out of it. Every single, oh, and you also have to make sure the joints are on all the way, otherwise sometimes you get problems with the register mechanism, because like there's I think 7 linkages between the upper and lower joint, and they all have to be aligned perfectly, otherwise the instrument isn't going to play very well. What the heck was Oh, a neat little trick on contrabass clarinet. So generally you can't play the altissimo, but there's a few ways to cheat it. So a high F sharp, or no, high C sharp, you just use your F sharp fingering with the register key. High D, you just use the register key and just play like that. High E, so you play what would be a G, and then you hold the G sharp key, so this key on the side, kind of like how on oboe you have that second register bend, and if you do that, you can play a high E. And try not to squeak like I just did. And you can sometimes kind of play a high F, but it doesn't really come out very well. Oh, what is happening tonight? I swear, I'm not normally this bad. Oh, that's why. Yeah, so sometimes if I don't play this for a long time, some of the pads stick, so that's probably what's happening. Yeah. So yeah, just a kind of a little LeBlanc conch. I say little, not in that sense, but yeah, it's a decent contrabass clarinet. Most people tend to go for the paperclip models, but I find that these straight models are just fine. If you don't need a lower range. Obviously, there are some pieces that require it, but anything that you the most common low note I see is a low D. And what I do for low D, actually, I got this piece of tube at Home Depot, and I just stick it in the bell, and that makes a really in tune low D, and it actually works quite well. So that's a great option if you don't want to spend like what $5,000 on a paperclip. You can get one of these for $2,000 or $3,000 and just use the an extension like that when you need to. I very rarely see notes below low D. I'm sure there's some pieces that use low C, but again, I think you could just make an extension like that, because I think most of those pieces that use a low C don't also use a low D. So you can get away with kind of like sticking that extension to your bell and only using it when you need to. So that's a definitely. If I ever were to come across a cheap paperclip, I'd probably buy one just because they're pretty cool. But these are definitely a good cheap option if you're just looking to get into contrabass and clarinet. There's also the Vito instruments. So the Vitos are the plastic versions of these, but they're not as good because the posts that are used to holding the keys, they are not locked in. So what this means is that the keys can start binding, and yeah, don't get a Vito. It just the mechanism is a pain in the ass. They're a one-piece model. So, and the case for this instrument is actually about the size of a bass clarinet case, but the one-piece case is like 6.5 feet long. So it's just completely impractical to carry anywhere. Although I think some of these are one-piece also, but generally the ones I've seen are two-piece. But yeah, I think the metal ones, and the metal ones aren't even that much more expensive than the plastic Vitos. So definitely not worth getting a Vito. Although I have seen a few Vitos on eBay that were like they sold for like less than $500. So maybe if you were like on an extreme budget and you just wanted to contrabass and mess around with it, maybe get a Vito. But if you're looking for like a serious instrument you're going to play on a regular basis, I would highly recommend looking for the LeBlanc metal professional models instead. After everything I paid for this, it was only a little bit over $1,000, which is like nothing for a contrabass. Okay, so the only thing I got left is my octo contra alto clarinet, or what's the name? So it's a sub great bass clarinet, I guess is the new name, the new Brett Newton approved name. So the mouthpiece I use on both contra and sub-contra is this one. So this is a mouthpiece. I reached out to Clark Phobes and I said, hey, I'm having trouble getting my, I'm building this octo contra bass, octo contra alto clarinet, and I'm having trouble with the response. And he said, well, that's amazing. Can you send me a picture? So I did, and we were just chatting a bit. And he said he would send me a mouthpiece. It's a debut, but he enlarged the window and he brought the tip up to, I think, 2.5 millimeters, so a huge tip opening. And by the way, as you can tell, I use a B flat Clark Phobes mouthpiece, and I like it. So he makes really good stuff. So if you need a good mouthpiece, definitely talk to him, and he will get you hooked up. But yeah, so he made this professional this sub contrabass mouthpiece, I guess. But I found it also works really good on contra with a soft reed. So I also use it then too. But this instrument, I kind of rebuilt the neck from where it was before. So now I actually have these bends. These are from a sink drain, and the reason I have them on there is because the fittings that I had previously, they were too resistant. So this is a nice smooth bend. So this is a much more better response, and the registers are now more in tune. Yay! Oh, everybody said it. I prefer the octo contra alto. I have sub-grade bass over the. So I kind of like. I mean, I get where Brett Newton is coming from, where it doesn't make sense, but I feel like if I post videos that were like, like the title was sub-grade bass clarinet, I feel like it doesn't convey how big the instrument is. Like octo contrabass just sounds big. I don't know. It's kind of confusing. I wish the whole naming convention was better, honestly. I do like the idea of naming contra alto clarinets great bass clarinets because that just makes sense. And then in a logical world, this should be a sub-grade bass clarinet. But I'm worried people aren't going to convey the message of how big it is. Yeah, the problem, contra alto needs to go away. That just kind of messes everything up. And alto, yeah, tenor, it should go soprano, alto, G clarinet, tenor, E flat, B flat bass, grade bass, contrabass, sub-grade bass, and then I guess octo contra bass would be sub-contra bass. I don't know. That's an argument for another time. What? G clarinet shouldn't exist, in my opinion. What's wrong with you? G clarinets are like, I mean, okay, so I do a lot of improv on clarinet just for fun, just messing around. And G clarinet is just my favorite instrument to improv because it's got that nice mix of upper notes, but the like the lower register of the G clarinet is just that little bit more mellow than the B flat clarinet. It's just such a beautiful sound. I love G clarinets. I do not agree with that. Contra alto was branding from the, yes, it was because there were, I think before LeBlanc came around, they were mostly called E flat contrabass clarinets, and contra alto was just made to distinguish them. But yeah, I think it was kind of LeBlanc that started this whole. Let's all blame LeBlanc. I guess they're not really around too much anymore. I meant D clarinet, so okay, yeah, okay, that makes more. You're forgiven. Don't worry. Yeah, I mean, I can see where the D clarinet would be useful because you have the set of B flat and A clarinets, and then you could have like an E flat and D clarinet. But the problem is, I mean, God, like I don't. It seems like most of what you would use a clarinet for now is the different tone rather than making fingers easier. I mean, because a true professional clarinetist could play theoretically at least equally well on B flat and A clarinet. I mean, do we really need to have E flat clarinetists buy 3 clarinet? Because an E flat would probably need to have a B flat just for doubling. They would need to have an E flat clarinet, and then they would need to have a D clarinet. So that's like, I mean, if you're buying professional instruments, that's like close to $15,000, $20,000 worth of instruments, depending on where you buy them from. So I mean, yeah, I agree. D clarinet is kind of just a remnant of the Baroque, late Baroque era. But so yeah, this is a sub great bass clarinet. So I think last time I posted a video on this, I only finished up to the B key. So now I have a key for the first hand finger, and I also, let me see if I can get a good frame. I also started working on the open tone hole for open G, and I also installed a register key. So now I can play in the upper register. And the idea is that I'm going to have two manual register keys. So it's going to be like a very old school bass clarinet. And that's just because trying to build anything more complicated than that, like an automatic mechanism, is going to be kind of difficult. So I'm just trying to keep it simple for now. But now this instrument has a tuning slide. Let's see what other than that, it's not really much different than last time we saw it. But yeah, it's definitely coming together. I added a brace there so it's more secure, and just I've done some general tuning work. And other than that, what's going on in the comments? Clarinets aren't recorders, but okay. So the point Brett Newton is trying to make is that the naming convention just doesn't make sense as is. I mean, if you think about it from a logical perspective, it makes complete sense why we should change the name to great bass. I mean, think about like the alto flute. It was originally called the bass flute, but once we got a real bass flute, we renamed it the alto flute. So I mean, you could say the same things about clarinets. I mean, before 1900, we really didn't have anything much lower. Even contrabass clarinets really weren't like they weren't really used this much at the time. So I mean, contrabasses obviously make sense. It's an octave lower than bass. But once you start getting like the weird instruments in E flat and instruments below it and above it, it gets really, really confusing. So I definitely agree with Brett Newton's point that it should be renamed. I know I know, yeah, there's a big debate in the comments. Yeah, and this tends to upset clarinetists when you tell them you want to rename all their instruments. It's about 3K over. Wait, what's about 3K overpriced? Oh wait, okay, I missed a ton of comments. What the heck? Okay, clarinets are great. Bass sounds dumb. Debatable. We want our own thing. Difficult. Are you adding more keys? Okay, here's back on track. Okay, are you adding more keys in the future? Yeah, I'm gonna try and make it a simplified bone system. So if you think like the Nouveau Clarinet, which is like a simplified clarinet, it's just basic, bare bones. This is all you need to play a chromatic scale, and that's basically what it's going to have. I mean, it's not. I would like to make a true bone system instrument, but I'm only one person, guys. I can't make like a. I don't know. I would love to make like a perfect copy of like the original LeBlanc instrument, but I'm just going to try and get it playing and make a fully chromatic instrument first, and then we'll see where it goes from there. What are your thoughts on a custom low C Selmer contralto that's been on eBay for a while? There's been some really weird things coming from Brazil. I think it is cool. It is really cool. It is not worth $7,000. You can get a LeBlanc paperclip low C contralto clarinet for $3,000 or $4,000. And I love the Selmer Rosewood contrabass clarinet. It looks really cool. And yeah, that's really cool. It's like paying homage to the contrabass, but it's not worth that much money. I'm sure whoever built it took their time and they put a lot of work into it, and that's great. But it's just not. It's like some of my projects. Like, how many hours have I put into this? Actually, this is a bad example. Like, how many hours did I put into the contrabass recorder? Probably like, let's say 5 hours. And how much would it be worth if I sold it? Maybe $100. So like $20 an hour. That's not what my. Oh, okay, that's about it. Let's say $50. It'd probably sit on eBay and it'd probably sell for $50. It's like worth $10 an hour. So, I mean, that's like my wage. Like what you put into an instrument is not necessarily what you get out of it. So, I mean, this works both ways. Like, let's say you take like an old Selmer bass clarinet that costs like $1,000 and you put a low C extension on it, and you maybe you spend like $3,000 on extension. You could sell that instrument for $5,000 and make a profit. But if you're taking something like a Bundy contralto and you're adding a low C, I mean, yeah, it's cool and it's unique, but it's still not as low as a contrabass clarinet, which is arguably the more useful of the two instruments. And there are already low C contralto clarinets available on the market, professional models for much less. So I just don't think it's cool, but it's not worth what they're asking. I would buy it for $3,000, maybe. And there's a lot of sketchy instruments coming from Brazil. I mean, there's some scams coming from them, so I would be careful too buying it. Oh wait, did I miss? Where's the? Oh my God, there's a lot of comments. Jeez, how did I miss all these? It's $3 cover price. Yeah, not everything is cheap. The contralto. The Bundy, yeah. So I mean, Bundys, they're cheap. You can get a working Bundy for under $1,000. And then I know like Stephen Fox will charge you about $4,000 for a low C extension, at least on a bass clarinet. I'm assuming it's going to be about the same. Let's say you made out of plastic. So let's say you bought a Bundy for $1,000, and that's expensive. And then that's expensive for a Bundy. And then you spent as much as you could, like $4,000 on the extension. It's really nice. You're only in that instrument $5,000, and you have the same thing as what's on eBay for $7,000. So what's the point? I still like my contra. What's a contraberry? Yeah. I've seen Brazilian videos of a saxophone modified to play low G. So that is the what is it, Gel Steiner? I don't know how to say his name, but yeah. Yeah, he's making like a bass saxophones to low G, which apparently are very popular in Brazil, which it makes sense. I mean, contrabass saxophones are still pretty hard to find. So if you can get like the same low notes out of a bass saxophone, it definitely makes it much more useful of an instrument. Even 3K is high. It's $1,000 horn with how much in extension? Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about like extensions for low clarinet, it kind of gets weird. Like, let's think about it. You can buy a Selmer bass clarinet. Oh, that's a good example. So you could buy a decent wooden professional bass clarinet for under $1,000, and that has everything from low E flat up. So that's like 99% of the notes you would ever need. But then let's say you need a low C horn. Well, suddenly those 3 extra notes will cost you like $1,000 each, just in the sense that low C instruments are more valuable and more expensive than their low E flat counterparts. So I guess it depends how much. Like with bass clarinets, it makes sense because low C is starting to become a more common note. Low C instruments are becoming the norm, and you're starting to see more notes below low E flat. So it makes sense while low C instruments are going up in price. But with with contralto, I guess the problem is I don't think there's any music for contralto that goes below low E flat. It's good for like transposition. If you're reading like a contrabassoon part, it's good to have. But yeah, I guess what you say is the ends don't justify the means. It doesn't make sense financially. I don't know. I've always kind of wanted to build a Bundy contralto to low C, but since I already have a contrabass clarinet, I can't think of a reason to do it. This instrument, however, I do plan on making it extend to low C, and I'm going to do something similar to that instrument on eBay. I'm going to have it's going to come. The lower joint is going to continue up, and the bell is going to be somewhere up here, and eventually I'll connect the keys to the joint with some linkages, kind of like I have on the register mechanism, and that'll be how I articulate it. So that shouldn't actually be too hard, but I want to get the upper part of the instrument essentially first. E flat clarinet to low C. It'd be funny. It'd be interesting. I guess you never really see any Basset instruments below B flat, really. I've seen a C clarinet with an extension to low D, which was mostly just for improv, and I guess I don't know, have there been D clarinets to low C. I don't think so, but maybe. And I guess because I guess when you have a high clarinet, you're pretty much expected to be playing in the high register most of the time, because that's where you get the most use out of it. Because why would you need to play lower than a low E? Because you've already got the B flat clarinet that's so common. I don't know. That's the whole argument about tone and do different instruments have different tone colors, and is it worth? A whole huge argument that I'm not even going to try to make sense of. There's a Chinese YouTube channel is in a video of a full blown. I have seen full blown E flat clarinets. I almost bought one, but then I said to myself at the last minute, am I ever going to use this instrument? And it's kind of one of those things like if I specialized in, well, I say specialized in the sense that if I had an interest in higher clarinets, I would probably want something like a E flat full blown, just because it's unique and quirky and it's cool to have. But I'm way more interested in lower clarinets, so I like all the quirky basset horns and stuff like that. But yeah, I think Amati made them at some point. Some other Eastern European companies made them, and Selmer made a full-blown version of their Series 9 and Series 10 E-flat clarinets. They're very hard to find, but they do occasionally show up on eBay. I guess the idea with a full-blown E-flat is that you could read D clarinet parts, which would be pretty useful. And also the extra tone hole helps with the clarinet. Dropped a piece of thing. I have these little like rubber stoppers for the keys. They keep falling off, and I keep forgetting to glue them on. Let me put this instrument down for now. It's kind of awkward. I actually found that a bass guitar stand works perfectly for this instrument. So I don't have to go out and make a fancy stand. I just have a bass guitar stand holding that thing up. So yeah, full blown. I've seen a full blown A flat clarinet. I think it was made by was it Ripamonti, the same company I tried the other A flat I tried. Yeah, I mean full blowns are. I think they're seen as more of like a gimmick than anything else. They're definitely useful in some senses, but like things like the articulated C sharp G sharp, you can't play the long. Some of the fingerings in altissimo, it kind of limits their use. Well, I would like what I want is this is. I was trying to not show some of my broken instruments. This is like the only the closest thing to a full dome I have. It's an Ubel. It needs a lot of work. It's an Ubel B flat clarinet with it's a reform bohm system. But the cool thing about this is it doesn't have the articulated C sharp G sharp, which I really like because I don't like that key. But it has the left hand A flat E flat, and it has a low A flat, so it's super useful. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this. I'm going to make, if I was ever to make a Basset B flat clarinet, I would use this because there's no flare in the bore. It kind of like the bore is cylindrical up into this tonal, so it would be very easy to graft an extension. And make a Basset clarinet B flat. But that's probably a project for another day. How low does your octave contra go? It goes to low E right now. Eventually, I would like to go to low C or maybe low B. Because if I went to low B, it would actually match the range of the octave contrabass clarinet as it sits right now, which I think would be kind of cool. And definitely the octave contra alto is easier to play, so that would be a big advantage. Lopez Instrumentos makes saxes for the CCB Orchestra in Brazil. They have huge selections of their church filled with weird saxophones extended to go awfully low. Yeah, so they're the ones who made or commissioned at least the subcontrabass saxophone. I think yeah, I've seen some of their videos. That's pretty cool, honestly. I would love to try a contrabass saxophone, or even I don't think I've even tried a bass saxophone at this point. The only two useful things on full blown was the third finger ring key and the low. Yeah, I agree. The B flat fingering is really useful in certain passages. I like the left hand A flat, E flat personally, and then I was playing a piece and there was a low E. I forget what it was, but there was a low E flat, and I couldn't play it. And I guess it was probably a transcription error, but apparently it's somewhat common to see low E flats accidentally in pieces or left over from the period when full bones are more common. So I don't know. In some situations, it might be useful to have a low E flat, but I just played it up the octave and it was fine. No, it'd still be a whole step above the octave. Wait, okay, so the low C on octo contralto clarinet would be a low concert E flat, and a concert E flat would be a low F. So the octo contrabass goes to a low E. Now, so yeah, a low B would be the lowest note, would be a low B on the octo contralto would be a low E on the octo contrabass, I think. Unless I'm doing the math wrong. I'm pretty sure. I don't know. No woodwind, not woodwind, but on the topic of getting instruments for cheap, I bought a cornet back in April for $50. Dude, I could easily sell it for. Yeah, so one of my only experiences with brass instruments was actually I bought a cornet from a carrot. It'd be cool if you could sell a carrot for 170. Maybe if we made a carrot clarinet. But yeah, I bought a cornet from a pawn shop for $50 and I sold it for 100. And I kind of tried to plan it, and I realized I'm not made for playing brass instruments. Yeah, probably went to somebody who would actually use it instead of me who hoards instruments. I have music that has a low A for oboe. Yeah, have you seen the Lore Lobo? It's an oboe that goes to low A. I don't know what it would be. Oh, Brett, you mean the original octo contrabass clarinet? Okay, yeah, I get you. I was talking about I was talking about my instrument that I made. Although the lowest extended instrument I know of is a bass clarinet that goes to low B flat. I don't know if I can make that go to low B. Yeah, whatever. I think I'll probably stop at low C. Maybe I'll go to low B. I don't know. I'll figure that out when I get there. But yeah, there's an instrument called a lobo, which is an oboe that goes to low A, but they're common. I think you can still order them from Lore. Thoughts about alto clarinet? Recommended brands. Oh, where were you for the alto clarinet section? Okay, so yeah, I said my top brand for alto clarinet is Buffet, specifically the instruments from around 1950, 1960. They are fairly expensive, so cheaper instruments. If you have big hands like me, the Bundys that you can get for fairly cheap are actually pretty decent. I don't mind the open holes whatsoever. If you have smaller hands, I don't like Vitos or Nobles because I find the register vent is too small. But if you had some way to like drill out the register vent or replace it with a register vent from a B flat clarinet, they become a lot better. There's also Malern stencils, so like Con alto clarinets, King alto clarinets. A lot of the other instruments that you see on eBay that aren't Selmers or Buffets or Malerns, and they can be decent with a little bit of work. But yeah, I would definitely, if you're looking for a first alto clarinet, I would definitely consider a Bundy if hand size isn't a problem. The low A oboe, there are low A's and Schumann 3 romances. Okay, so I guess there's repertoire for it. I mean, are there historical low A oboes, or is the low A oboe something new? Because I always thought that like most romantic oboes only went to low B natural. I don't know much about oboes though. I guess that would make sense. I mean, because I know as early as like the early 1900s, the Heckelphone went down to a low A. So I mean, that would make sense. So they're just kind of taking something from instruments that already exist. My dream B flat, a clarinet set is a Bakun CG carbon fiber with Coca-Cola core. Yeah, I'm kind of wondering how well I've never got a chance to play them. They definitely look really cool. I'm wondering how well they play though. I do like the idea of having a wooden instrument that won't crack because it's wrapped in carbon fiber, but the price, I don't know if the price justifies how well they play really. And I'm not going to go into much detail, but I remember, I think Brett in one of the videos says, and I definitely agree with this, if you have to puff your cheeks to play woodwind instruments, but you still sound good, there's nothing wrong with that. You're just trying to make a good sound. There's more than one way to skin a cat. I used to puff my cheeks, and on some instruments I still do, but there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, as long as you can make a good tone. Like I know there's one clarinetist who's very well known in Japan. I won't say her name. Yeah, more than one way to skin a cat, but the actual phrase refers to catfish. It's not like an actual cat. Don't worry. Don't call Pete on me. Yeah, there's one clarinetist. I won't say her name, but she's like very world renowned. But listening to her in person, all I could hear when she's playing music is just a constant hissing sound. He goes, yeah, maybe her embouchure is right, but I don't know if she's using like too hard of a reed or she's just leaking air. But like, even if you have like perfect form and you've been practicing for years and years of clarinet, you can still do things wrong. Like, I mean, it's hard to be perfect, and nobody's perfect. So, I mean, if you have to puff your cheeks to sound good, it's better to sound good and have bad form than to have perfect embouchure but sound bad. That's what I'm trying to say. Well, that piece is from the 1840s. Wait, which piece? Oh, the Schumann for 3. I don't know. I don't know much about oboe repertoire or repertoire. I don't know. What were we talking about before? Oh, the octo contra alto. I don't have much else to talk about that. Anybody got any last minute questions? I guess we've been on for 2 hours, 21 minutes. Anybody have any last minute questions or anything? Well, anyway, guys, so I think we got all the way through my my instrument collection. Yeah, I definitely have too many, and I think probably like a third of them are probably gonna end up on eBay at some point. But yeah, I mean, most of these instruments, again, I bought them. They were either broken or they had some problems that need to be fixed, because I never really buy anything like perfect condition. I always try and save money and buy something that's that needs work. But yeah, even with like I think like in total, I probably spent about $10,000, which sounds like a lot, but think about it. That's less than the price of a new low C bass clarinet. So yeah, for $10,000, I have almost a complete clarinet family. And yeah, so fixing instruments. Oh, we got a lot of questions. Yeah, fixing instruments definitely pays off if you know how to do it and you know what you're doing. Where's the black PVC instrument? So I sold that to Super Sub Octo Contra Alto Bass. So that was a PVC Basset horn that yeah. So I kind of made it because I wanted to see if I could make my own Basset horn, and it actually turned out pretty good. I sold it to him. I will probably try to make other instruments like that in the future, but I'm not really sure exactly what my next project is going to be. It seems like many instruments that have been extended in the last decade were extended to accommodate old composers who don't know the. So you're referring to like the lupophone, how was it Strauss? I think that he put low Fs in his the Alpine sweep. I think that's the name. I don't know. I don't know much about music, but yeah. So then Tecophones only go to low A, so that was a big problem. So then finally the lupophone was made, which was arranged to low F to play those parts. I wonder if the fact that composers are getting more knowledgeable on average will help that practice. I hope with how easily accessible information about instruments is on the internet, I hope that will. I mean, most composers today are generally, at least most like, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a mix of like composers who are very conservative about what they use, just using a standard instrumentation. But then there are also composers experimenting with all these new instruments that are now available thanks to the internet, like sarrusophones. Like you're starting to see parts for bass saxophones more often. I mean, the bass saxophone was almost an instrument that was dying, and now it's coming back thanks to cheap instruments from China. Like so, I mean, even these rare instruments, hopefully composers will now know more about them instead of just knowing that they're fringe instruments, that maybe I could use it. Strauss knew the Heckel family well and probably was in Kazan. Yeah, I think I remember reading something about how there's a theory that he was hoping to convince Heckel to try and make heckle phones to go to low F, and that was at least a plan at one point. But then World War I came along, and unfortunately that plan didn't work out, and the heckle phones we have today only go to low A. Well, I'm surprised Heckle has never tried to make an heckle phone to low F. I mean, it seems like, I don't know much about Heckle or bassoons in general, but it kind of seems like Heckle, they were really innovative in the early 20th century, and then now they're just kind of riding on their reputation. I mean, they're selling bassoons for crazy money, and they have waiting periods that are close to a decade at this point, and they're kind of riding on their reputation. Because I know that, because I think the Lupophone is half the price of the Heckle phone. You get an extended range. You get, from what I hear, it's a better acoustical design. So I don't know what Heckle is doing. They should make a cheap Heckle. They should make a plastic $3,000 Heckle phone. I would totally buy one of those. Doubt it'll ever happen, but that would be cool. All right. So anyway, guys, it's getting pretty late. So I think I'm going to call it a night. So yeah, this is a great video. So I'm going to try and do a live stream every week. I'll try and have like a different topic, whether it be like a project I'm working on, or just something I'm interested in talking about. But yeah, if you guys have any questions about any instruments you saw, or if you're looking to purchase one of my instruments and you want to make an offer, feel free to email me. 12 to 15 year wait list. That's crazy. Like what if you what if you get like you're a freshman in college and you say, okay, I'm going to order a Heckle bassoon, and then like 15 years later it's like, oh, I remember this bassoon I ordered that I spent $60,000 on. Well, now I'm not even playing music anymore. I guess if you're buying they've stopped all production. Oh, well, that's too bad. Heckle phone's really cool. I guess if you're buying a Heckle bassoon, you know you're going to be the best of the best, hopefully, or you just have tons of money to spend. Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to try and I'll try and have like a theme of the week. I'll try and do live stream every week. But yeah, thanks everyone for watching. If you want to contact me about any instruments you saw, feel free to email me at octocontrabass@gmail.com. I try to answer questions and everything. Can we call next? What do you mean by call next stream? You mean like, oh, do you want to guess like what the topic's going to be? Or do you want to suggest a topic? I haven't really thought of what I can do for next week. What's 2 weeks from now? I have a topic. It's going to be fun. I'm learning a instrument from scratch. It's an instrument I've never played before. I think some of you are probably pretty familiar with it. It's a very quirky instrument. I don't know. I think Brett Newton could probably guess what it is, maybe. But yeah, you'll all see. That'll be fun when it comes in 2 weeks. I'll do like an unboxing and a first play. Next week, I'm not really sure. I'll have to come up with a new topic. But anyway, thanks, guys. Hope you all have a wonderful. Oh wait, talk over. Yeah, message me on Instagram if you want. All right. Anyway, guys, thanks for tuning into the stream. Hope you all have a wonderful night.